I did the math on 10,000 XRP, and what I found stunned me, not because the number is outrageous, not because it requires blind faith or hopium, but because when you actually sit down and work through the mechanics of what XRP was built to do, the real math, the institutional math, the math that the mainstream financial media never touches, the number stops feeling crazy and starts feeling logical. Today I'm going to walk you through exactly what I found. Stay with me, because this one will change how you think about this asset permanently. What is up, everyone? John OG here. Welcome back to the channel. And if this is your first time here, welcome. You found the right place. This is Crypto John OG, where we do not chase price pumps, we do not scream about moonshots, and we do not insult your intelligence with empty speculation dressed up as analysis. What we do here is sit down, go deep, and work through the real substance of what is happening in crypto and global finance. The math, the mechanics, the institutional architecture, and the honest assessment of what is realistic and what demands serious attention. Today's video is one of the most intellectually serious things I have done on this channel. Not because the number is big, but because the reasoning behind it is genuinely worth understanding, regardless of where you currently stand on XRP as an investment. Before we go a single step further, I have to give you the disclaimer I give on every single video, because transparency is the foundation of everything I do here. Nothing in this video is financial advice. I am not a licensed financial advisor, investment professional, broker, or analyst of any kind. Everything you hear in this video is strictly for educational and informational purposes only. Cryptocurrency markets are highly volatile. They move fast, they are unpredictable, and there is always significant risk of loss involved in any investment decision. You could lose money. Please do your own independent research, speak to a qualified financial professional before making any investment decisions, and never invest more than you are prepared to lose entirely. The math I am going to walk through today is a framework for thinking, not a prediction, not a guarantee, and not investment advice of any kind. With that said, let us get into exactly what I found. I want to start by doing something that most people talking about $10,000 XRP never bother to do, and that is acknowledge the most obvious objection up front, clearly and honestly. Because if I am going to take this seriously, I have to start with intellectual honesty and not pretend the counter-arguments do not exist. The standard objection to any 5-figure XRP price target goes like this. XRP currently has a circulating supply of approximately 59 billion tokens. At $10,000 per token, that implies a total market capitalization of approximately $590 trillion. The entire global GDP, the total value of every good and service produced by every country on Earth in a single year, is roughly $100 trillion. The total value of all the world's stocks, bonds, real estate, and every other asset class combined is estimated at somewhere between $500 and $900 trillion, depending on the methodology used. So a $590 trillion market capitalization for a single cryptocurrency is, on its face, an astronomical number. It is larger than global GDP by a factor of 6. It approaches or exceeds estimates of total global wealth, and therefore, by the standard market cap framework that most investors use to evaluate any asset, $10,000 XRP appears to be mathematically impossible. That objection is coherent. It is logical. And if XRP were a store of value asset, something like gold or Bitcoin, whose price is essentially determined by how many people want to hold it as a wealth preservation mechanism, that objection would be entirely correct and this conversation would be over before it started. But here is the core of what I discovered when I sat down and worked through this properly. The market cap framework that works perfectly well for evaluating store of value assets completely breaks down when you apply it to a utility asset that is designed to move through a system rather than sit still inside it. And that distinction, that fundamental difference in what kind of asset XRP actually is precisely the math that has been buried, not deliberately hidden by some shadowy force, but consistently overlooked, misapplied, and misunderstood by the vast majority of people who comment on this asset's price potential.
Including many people who should know better. To understand why market cap is the wrong lens for XRP, you have to understand what XRP was actually designed to do at a structural level. And I mean genuinely designed. Not what the community hopes it will do, not what marketing materials suggest, but what the architecture of the system was built to accomplish from the ground up.
The global correspondent banking system processes somewhere between $150 and $200 trillion in cross-border payment flows every single year. Every day, trillions of dollars move between countries through a network of intermediary banks using messaging protocols that are decades old and fundamentally inefficient. And to make that system work, to ensure that a payment sent from a bank in New York can be received by a bank in Tokyo or Lagos or São Paulo, those banks have to maintain what are called Nostro and Vostro accounts. A Nostro account is money that a bank holds in a foreign currency at a correspondent bank abroad. A Vostro account is the mirror image of that, funds held on behalf of a foreign bank in the domestic currency. The purpose of these accounts is simple. They pre-fund settlement. Before your payment can move, the money to settle it has to already be sitting on the other side, waiting. The global banking system currently has an estimated 27 trillion locked up in these pre-funded Nostro and Vostro accounts at any given moment. $27 trillion, sitting idle, not earning meaningful returns, not being deployed productively, just parked in foreign banks around the world to lubricate a payment system that processes transactions over days rather than seconds. That is the problem that XRP was built to solve, not at the margins, not for small retail remittances, at the core of global institutional finance. The idea is that if XRP functions as a bridge currency, if a bank can convert dollars to XRP, send that XRP across the XRP ledger in 3 to 5 seconds, and convert it back to the destination currency on the other side, then those pre-funded Nostro and Vostro accounts become unnecessary. That $27 trillion in idle capital gets unlocked. That is the use case. That is what the architecture was built for. Now here is where the math I found starts to get genuinely interesting, because the question of what price XRP needs to reach in order to serve that function efficiently is not a speculative question. It is a mathematical question, and the answer depends on something that most price analyses of XRP completely ignore: the concept of monetary velocity. Monetary velocity is a well-established concept in economics. It refers to how many times a unit of currency changes hands within a given period. The United States dollar, for example, has a monetary velocity of somewhere between 5 and 7, meaning the average dollar gets spent or transferred roughly 5 to 7 times per year. A bridge currency like XRP, which is designed to be bought, used for settlement, and sold within seconds, has an entirely different velocity profile. Each unit of XRP is not sitting in a wallet for a year. It is cycling through the system continuously, potentially dozens or hundreds of times per day across thousands of payment corridors simultaneously. This matters enormously for price analysis because it means the total value that XRP can process is not determined by its market cap alone. It is determined by its market cap multiplied by its velocity. If XRP has a relatively modest circulating value of, say, $1 trillion, a figure that sounds large but is less than 2% of the $59 trillion US money supply, and it turns over through settlement cycles dozens of times per day, the total annual value it can settle is not $1 trillion. It is many multiples of $1 trillion. The velocity multiplier is the hidden variable that market cap calculations leave out entirely, and it is the single most important number in the entire $10,000 XRP argument. When I worked through this calculation framework, taking the scale of the Nostro and Vostro problem that XRP is designed to address, applying a realistic velocity multiplier based on how bridge currencies actually function in practice, and then working backward to ask what per token price that settlement function requires to operate efficiently at institutional scale, the numbers that start emerging are not in the single digits or even the double digits. They are significantly higher, not because of speculative demand, not because of retail mania, but because the mathematical relationship between the value being settled, the velocity of the settlement asset, and the supply of that asset points toward a price that most people would currently describe as extreme. Let me walk you through a simplified version of the framework so you can follow the logic yourself and verify it independently rather than just taking my word for it. Start with a conservative assumption. Assume XRP captures just 10% of the global Nostro and Vostro liquidity problem, just 10% of that $27 trillion that is currently sitting idle in pre-funded correspondent banking accounts. That gives us $2.7 trillion in value that XRP needs to be able to move on any given day. Now apply a conservative velocity assumption. If each unit of XRP cycles through a settlement transaction just 10 times per day, a number that is actually quite conservative for a bridge currency operating in automated institutional payment corridors, then the total XRP market value needed to settle $2.7 trillion per day is $270 billion. That is the market cap required to support just 10% of the Nostro and Vostro use case at a velocity of 10 cycles per day. Now, here is where it gets important. Divide that $270 billion required market cap by the actively circulating and tradable supply of XRP, not the total supply of 100 billion tokens, but the portion that is actually liquid and available for bridge currency use after accounting for long-term holds, institutional locks, Ripple's escrow, and tokens tied up in other use cases. Conservative estimates of the actively tradable float for bridge currency purposes put that number somewhere between 20 and 30 billion tokens. Take the midpoint, 25 billion tokens. Divide $270 billion by 25 billion tokens. The result is just under $11 per token to serve just 10% of the Nostro and Vostro use case at a modest velocity of 10. Now scale that up. Scale the use case from 10% to 50%. Scale the velocity from 10 cycles per day to 50. Still conservative for automated institutional settlement. Scale the problem set from Nostro and Vostro alone to include the broader cross-border payments market, tokenized asset settlement, and CBDC interoperability that XRP is also being positioned to serve. The numbers that come out of that scaling exercise are not $10, not $100, not even $1,000. They start approaching the five-figure range, not because of hype, because of arithmetic. Required XRP price, actively tradable, supply total settlement value, chart daily velocity. That is the formula. That is the math that I found buried in the framework that serious institutional analysts use to think about bridge currency pricing, and that almost nobody in the retail crypto commentary space ever applies to XRP. The market cap objection treats XRP like a savings account. The velocity-adjusted settlement math treats XRP like what it was actually designed to be, a high-frequency institutional settlement instrument. The difference between those two frameworks is the difference between a price ceiling in the single digits and a price potential in the 4 and 5 figures. Now, I want to be extremely clear about something, because intellectual honesty is non-negotiable here, and I refuse to give you a video that feels like a hype piece dressed up in mathematics. The calculation framework I just walked through is a theoretical model. It depends on a chain of assumptions about XRP's market share of global settlement flows, about velocity, about the portion of supply that functions as bridge currency float, about the timeline over which institutional adoption reaches the scale required to make these numbers relevant. Change any of those assumptions significantly, and the output changes significantly. That is the nature of any projection model in finance. The assumptions drive the output. What the framework does not depend on, and this is the part I want you to hold on to, is speculation about future market sentiment, retail buying pressure, social media trends, or any of the other drivers that typically dominate crypto price discussions. The case for a very high XRP price, built properly, is not a sentiment case. It is a structural, functional, mathematical case about what price is required for XRP to perform the settlement function it was designed to perform at the scale the global financial system actually operates at. Whether XRP ever reaches that price depends on whether it actually gets deployed at that scale, but the math that says what price is required at that scale is not guesswork. It follows from the same analytical frameworks that institutional economists use to analyze any settlement currency. There is one more layer to this that I think is genuinely underappreciated, and it connects directly to what is happening in the XRP ecosystem right now in 2026. The settlement math framework I described only becomes relevant if the institutional infrastructure to support deployment at scale actually gets built. And what we are seeing in early 2026, Société Générale deploying its regulated euro stablecoin on the XRP ledger, Deutsche Bank integrating Ripple's technology for cross-border payments, Ripple receiving conditional OCC approval for a national trust bank charter, Aviva investors partnering with Ripple to tokenize traditional funds, the XRP ledger ranking second globally in real-world asset growth. All of that represents exactly the kind of institutional infrastructure build-out that is the precondition for the settlement math to become operative. The math does not work unless the infrastructure is there. The infrastructure being built right now does not guarantee the math will work, but the relationship between the two is not coincidental. The institutions deploying on XRP Ledger right now are not doing so because they read a YouTube video about $10,000 price predictions. They are doing it because they evaluated the technology, the network, the compliance infrastructure, and the settlement performance of the XRP ledger against every other available option and concluded that it meets their requirements. That institutional validation is the foundation that the long-term mathematical case for XRP's price is being built on, one deployment at a time. I want to speak directly to the people watching this who have been holding XRP through everything, through the SEC lawsuit, through the exchange delistings, through years of price suppression and relentless negative narrative from people who either did not understand the technology or had an interest in dismissing it. I know some of you have been sitting with this investment for a very long time, and the emotional weight of that, the patience it requires, the doubt it generates, the moments where the entire thesis feels like it might be wrong, that is real and it deserves acknowledgement. What I can tell you honestly is this: the thesis that serious long-term XRP holders have always carried was never about a price chart or a short-term catalyst. It was about a genuine belief that the technology solves a real problem at a scale that the global financial system actually cares about. And the math that I walked through today, the velocity-adjusted settlement calculation that produces numbers in the 4 and 5 figure range, that math has always been there. It did not appear recently. It was always embedded in the design philosophy of the XRP ledger. What is new is that the institutional environment is now beginning to align with the mathematics in a way that is visible, verifiable, and undeniable. The infrastructure is being built. The institutions are arriving. The regulatory environment is clearing. None of that is a guarantee of any specific outcome, but it is meaningful and it is real. For the viewers who are newer to XRP and are trying to figure out how to evaluate all of this, here is how I would frame it honestly. Do not make an investment decision based on a price model. Any model that produces a 5-figure number for any asset requires chains of assumptions that can be challenged and that carry real uncertainty. What you can do is evaluate the technology independently, look at who is actually deploying on the XRP ledger right now and why, study the ISO 2022 compliance work and what it means for institutional integration, read the primary sources on the Nostro and Vostro problem and Ripple's proposed solution, and form your own view about whether the adoption trajectory being built right now is the kind that eventually makes the settlement math operative. That process, doing the actual research, verifying claims from primary sources, thinking independently, is worth infinitely more than any price prediction anyone gives you, including me. That is what I found when I did the math. Not a guaranteed outcome, not a promise, but a coherent, logical, mathematically grounded framework that explains why people who understand institutional finance and settlement mechanics take the 5-figure XRP discussion seriously, even when the mainstream dismisses it. The math is real. The infrastructure is being built, and the relationship between the two is worth understanding deeply. If this video gave you something genuinely useful, a new framework, a clearer picture, a reason to go deeper into the research yourself, then please hit the like button. It helps this content reach the people who are looking for this kind of serious analysis. And if you are not subscribed yet, now is the time. Hit that subscribe button and tap the notification bell so you never miss a video when we drop new research and analysis. We are covering this story as it develops in real time, and you do not want to miss what comes next. Follow us on all our social platforms. The links are in the description below, because between videos I share real-time updates, quick breakdowns of breaking news, and thoughts on developing situations that do not always make it into a full video. The community we are building across those platforms is one of the most serious and grounded in this space, and I want you to be part of it. This is John OG. Do the math, do the research, think for yourself, and I will see you in the next one. Take care out there.